Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Architect of His Domain. Vincent Reeves had built his life on precision and control. At 42, he stood at the apex of his architecture firm, Cornerstone Designs, which he'd founded 12 years ago after walking away from a prestigious partnership at a larger company. Vincent wasn't just talented. He was visionary, blending brutalist aesthetics with sustainable functionality in ways that had earned him international recognition and a fortune that allowed his family to live in a modernist mansion of his own design in the hills overlooking Lake Michigan. The three-story glass and concrete structure was a testament to his philosophy: transparency supported by uncompromising strength. His wife, Audrey, had once joked that the house was the perfect metaphor for their marriage. She could always see what he was doing, but could never quite understand the foundation that kept him standing. Their daughter, Lily, 16 and brilliant, had inherited Vincent's analytical mind and Audrey's artistic sensibilities. She excelled at everything: academics, violin, track and field, and her room on the third floor was designed specifically to capture the morning light for her painting. That Friday morning in October, Vincent stood in his kitchen drinking black coffee, watching the mist rise off the lake. At 6'2", with salt and pepper hair cropped close to his scalp and a perpetually clean-shaven face, he cut an imposing figure even in casual clothes. His steel-blue eyes missed nothing, including the fact that Audrey hadn't slept in their bed the night before. "Late night with the museum board?" he asked when she finally entered the kitchen at 7:15, already dressed in a charcoal pencil skirt and cream blouse, her auburn hair swept into an elegant knot. "The fundraiser planning is killing me," she replied, not quite meeting his eyes as she poured herself coffee. At 39, Audrey was still striking: high cheekbones, almond-shaped green eyes, and a dancer's posture from her years with the Chicago Ballet before a knee injury had ended that career. Now she channeled her artistic passions into her role as the director of donor relations at the city's Contemporary Art Museum. Vincent nodded, filing away the slight tremor in her hand, the smudge of makeup at her jawline that didn't quite conceal what looked like a bruise. "Lily already left for her college tour? Bradford picked her up an hour ago. They're visiting Northwestern today, then University of Chicago tomorrow." Bradford was Audrey's brother, a professor of literature who had always been close to his niece. "I've got meetings until late tonight," Vincent said, rinsing his cup in the sink. "Don't wait up." "I won't," Audrey replied too quickly. "I've got that gallery opening downtown." As Vincent drove his Tesla down the winding road toward the city, he thought about the 5 text messages he'd seen on Audrey's phone last week. Messages she'd quickly deleted when she noticed him standing nearby. He thought about the credit card statements showing charges at hotels where she supposedly had daytime meetings. He thought about the changes in her, subtle at first, then increasingly obvious to his architect's eye that noticed when foundational elements shifted. He hadn't built his company by ignoring structural warning signs, and he hadn't survived his childhood by trusting blindly. Vincent's phone rang through the car speakers. "It's Diego," his assistant's voice announced. "Just confirming your 2 p.m. with the Stanfield Tower developers and reminding you about tonight's dinner with Mayor Morris." Vincent allowed himself a small smile. While his personal foundation might be cracking, his professional one remained unshakable. And tonight's meeting would bring him one step closer to securing the contract for the city's new arts district, a billion-dollar project that would cement his legacy. "Thanks, Diego. I'll be ready." Chapter 2. Cracks in the Foundation. Vincent's childhood home had been built on secrets. His father, Harold Reeves, had been a respected judge in public, but a tyrant at home, ruling his family with a mix of psychological manipulation and carefully administered cruelty that never left visible marks. Vincent's mother had escaped through pills and alcohol until she didn't escape at all, found drowned in the bathtub when Vincent was 12. The official ruling was accidental death, but Vincent had seen the bruises on her wrists that day. He'd learned to survive by watching, by noticing patterns, by understanding the architecture of power. When he was 16, he'd finally confronted his father with evidence of his affairs, threatening to expose him to his judicial review board. The older man had been shocked by his son's meticulous documentation: phone records, photographs, even hotel receipts. "You're more like me than I thought," Harold had said, a strange pride in his voice that made Vincent sick. Vincent had used the leverage to negotiate his freedom, a separate apartment, college tuition, and independence. He'd spoken to his father only when necessary after that, maintaining a cold, distanced relationship that persisted to this day. Now in his 70s, Harold lived in a condo Vincent paid for, an arrangement that kept the old man comfortable and, more importantly, contained. As Vincent sat in his corner office overlooking the Chicago skyline that afternoon, he thought about patterns of behavior. He pulled up the security app on his phone, checking the cameras installed throughout his home, a precaution he'd taken when they first moved in, citing concerns about their wealth attracting the wrong attention. Audrey had thought him paranoid but hadn't objected. The house was empty, as expected. He switched to the saved footage from the previous night, watching Audrey return home at 8:42 p.m. alone, then leave again at 9:17 p.m. with an overnight bag. Return at 6:23 a.m., wearing different clothes than she'd left in. Vincent closed the app and turned to his computer, typing in the password for a program his firm's IT specialist had installed for him last month, ostensibly for tracking company vehicles. In reality, it allowed him to track the GPS location of Audrey's car. Last night, it had been parked from 9:38 p.m. until 5:46 a.m. outside a luxury apartment building in River North. A quick property search revealed the penthouse was owned by Alexander Mercer. The name hit Vincent like a physical blow. Not because Mercer was a stranger, quite the opposite. Alexander Mercer was one of Chicago's most prominent real estate developers, a longtime client of Cornerstone Designs, and, most significantly, Vincent's closest friend for over 20 years. They'd met in architecture school, bonded over their shared drive and ambition. While Vincent had pursued design, Alex had gone into development, and their complementary skills had helped both men rise rapidly in their fields. Alex had been best man at Vincent's wedding, godfather to Lily, the one person Vincent had trusted implicitly. Vincent pulled up his calendar and canceled his dinner with the mayor. Then he called Diego. "I need everything we have on Mercer Properties. Every contract, every communication, every design we've ever done for them." "Is there a problem with the Lakeshore project?" Diego asked, referring to their current collaboration with Mercer. "Just gathering information," Vincent replied, his voice betraying nothing of the ice forming around his heart. "And Diego? This stays between us." After Diego left a stack of files on his desk, Vincent locked his office door and began his research. By midnight, he understood the full architecture of the betrayal. It wasn't just an affair. It was a calculated dismantling of everything he'd built. Financial records showed that over the past year, Mercer Properties had been quietly acquiring properties adjacent to sites targeted for Vincent's Arts District project. Communications revealed that Alex had been meeting with Vincent's competitors, and buried in Audrey's museum emails, which Vincent accessed using the emergency password she'd once shared with him, were discussions about a competing arts district proposal that would channel funds away from the city's project and into a private-public partnership headed by none other than Alexander Mercer. With Audrey's help, Alex was positioned to not only steal Vincent's personal life, but his professional legacy as well. Vincent sat back in his chair, something cold and dangerous crystallizing within him. He'd been betrayed before, by his father, by business partners who tried to force him out of his first firm. But never like this. Never by the people he'd allowed closest to him. He picked up his phone and made a call to someone he hadn't spoken to in years, Felix Russo, a former client with connections to Chicago's darker elements. A man who owed Vincent for keeping his name out of a scandal that would have destroyed him. "I need information," Vincent said when Felix answered. "And I may need other services after that." "For you, Vincent?" "Anything," Felix replied. "Just tell me who." Chapter 3. The Blueprint of Deception. Over the next 2 weeks, Vincent became the architect of his own deception. At home, he played the role of the oblivious husband, working late, discussing future plans with Audrey as if their foundation wasn't crumbling beneath them. He even attended a dinner party at Alex's penthouse, watching with clinical detachment as his wife and best friend performed their charade of casual friendship, missing the loaded glances and lingering touches that now seemed blindingly obvious. Felix's information had filled in the final pieces. The affair had begun 11 months ago, after a museum fundraiser hosted at one of Alex's properties. What had started as professional collusion had evolved into something more intimate, and more recently, more calculating. Vincent learned that Alex had leveraged his political connections to position himself as the frontrunner for the Arts District project, using insider information gleaned from Vincent's own designs. Audrey's role at the museum gave her access to the donor networks necessary to fund the competing proposal. Together, they weren't just betraying Vincent's trust. They were systematically dismantling his life's work. Most disturbing was what Felix discovered about Lily. Vincent's daughter wasn't on a college tour with her uncle. Bradford, it turned out, had been in Seattle at an academic conference all week. Instead, Lily had been staying at Alex's lake house in Michigan, supposedly for a special pre-college arts program that didn't exist. Security footage showed Alex and Audrey visiting the property, staying for hours, then leaving. What they were telling his daughter, what they were planning for her future, Vincent could only imagine. On Friday morning, exactly 3 weeks after he'd first noticed Audrey hadn't slept at home, Vincent set his plan in motion. "I'll be in Detroit for the weekend," he told Audrey over breakfast. "The Riverside project needs my personal attention." "The whole weekend?" Audrey asked, a flicker of something, relief, anticipation, crossing her face. "I'll be back Sunday night." Vincent kissed her cheek, inhaling her perfume mixed with another scent he now recognized as Alex's cologne. "Give Lily my love when she calls." Audrey nodded, already reaching for her phone, undoubtedly to text Alex about their unexpected freedom. Vincent drove to his office, where Diego had prepared the documents he'd requested: revised contracts, transfer paperwork, and the contents of a safety deposit box Vincent had maintained for years, containing leverage against various powerful people in Chicago, including evidence of Harold Reeves' judicial misconduct that Vincent had never used. At noon, Vincent met with his lawyer, finalizing arrangements that would protect his firm's assets. At 2, he visited his banker. At 4, he called Felix to confirm the evening's arrangements. At 5, he drove home, parking his car 2 blocks away, then approached his house from the wooded area behind the property. From the cover of the trees, he watched through the wall of windows as Audrey moved about the kitchen, preparing what appeared to be an elaborate dinner. At 6, Alex's Maserati pulled into the driveway. Vincent didn't need to watch their embrace through the windows. Instead, he circled to the garage and entered his code, silently raising the door just enough to slip underneath, then lowering it again. In the dim light, he moved to the interior door that connected to the mudroom, using his key to unlock it silently. Inside his own home, Vincent became a ghost, listening to the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses from the kitchen. He moved silently up the back staircase to his home office, where he activated an audio recording system he'd installed the previous week. Then, he sent a text message to Felix. Now. 3 minutes later, Audrey's phone rang. Vincent couldn't hear the conversation, but he didn't need to. Felix was calling with an emergency at the museum. A pipe burst threatening the new exhibition. As Vincent had anticipated, Audrey made apologies and rushed out, promising to return as soon as possible. Leaving Alex alone in the house, Vincent descended the stairs silently, entering the kitchen just as Alex was pouring himself another glass of wine. "Hello, Alex." The glass shattered on the floor as Alex spun around, his face draining of color. "Vincent, I thought," Audrey said. "I know what Audrey said." Vincent's voice was conversational, almost friendly. "I know everything she said. Everything you've said. Everything you've done." Alex's expression shifted from shock to calculation. "Look, I can explain. The development deal, it's not what you think. We were going to bring you in. After you stole my designs? After you used my wife to access my donors? After whatever you've been telling my daughter at your lake house." Vincent moved to the kitchen island, placing a folder on the marble surface. "Here's what's going to happen, Alex. You're going to sign these papers transferring your interests in the adjacent properties to a holding company that, coincidentally, I now control. You're going to withdraw your arts district proposal, and you're going to leave Chicago." Alex's face hardened. "Or what? You'll tell people your wife preferred me? That your daughter calls me for advice instead of her own father? Face it, Vincent, you built a perfect house, but you forgot to make it a home. That's why they both turned to me." Vincent smiled, and something in that expression made Alex take a step back. "I wasn't finished," Vincent said softly. "If you don't do exactly as I say, I'll release the documentation of how you bribed Commissioner Davis to overlook the structural deficiencies in the West Side development." The same deficiencies that killed 3 construction workers last year. Alex's face went slack. You're bluffing. Vincent slid his phone across the counter, displaying photographs of handwritten checks and text messages. Felix sends his regards. Vincent. Alex's voice took on a pleading tone. We've been friends for 20 years. Whatever you think is happening with Audrey. Sign the papers, Alex. Now. Vincent placed a pen on top of the folder. Consider it the price of walking away with your freedom. With shaking hands, Alex signed each document. As he placed the pen down, his expression hardened again. You think this solves anything? Audrey doesn't love you anymore. Lily thinks you're a cold, controlling asshole. You'll still end up alone. Vincent collected the folder calmly. Perhaps, but you won't be around to see it. He checked his watch. Audrey will be returning soon from her wild goose chase at the museum. I suggest you be gone before she arrives. What are you going to do to her? Alex asked, a flicker of concern crossing his face. Vincent's smile was chilling. Nothing she hasn't done to herself. He pulled out his phone and pressed a button. I just sent you an email with a plane ticket to Vancouver for tonight. I suggest you use it. After Alex left, Vincent poured himself a glass of the wine they'd been enjoying and sat at the dining table they'd set for their romantic dinner. He was still sitting there, calm and composed, when Audrey returned 40 minutes later. Vincent, she gasped, dropping her purse. You're supposed to be in Detroit. And you're supposed to be handling a crisis at the museum, he replied evenly. Interesting how neither of us is where we claim to be. The color drained from Audrey's face. I can explain. Don't bother, Vincent cut her off. Alex already left. After signing away his interest in the properties around my arts district and agreeing to withdraw his competing proposal. He took a sip of wine. He should be boarding a plane to Canada right about now. Audrey sank into a chair across from him, her carefully constructed world visibly crumbling. How long have you known? Long enough to understand it's not just an affair. It's a systematic betrayal. Vincent's voice remained unervingly calm. You and Alex using my connections, my designs, my donors. Planning to take everything I've built. It wasn't like that, Audrey protested weakly. Then explain, Lily. Vincent's voice finally took on an edge. Explain why my daughter is at Alex's lake house instead of on college tours. Explain what you've been telling her about me. Audrey's eyes widened. How did you? I know everything, Vincent said simply. The question is, what happens now? Chapter 4, The Precipice. 3 months had passed since that confrontation in the dining room. On the surface, life had resumed its normal patterns. Vincent went to work, came home, attended social functions with Audrey at his side. Alex Mercer had indeed left Chicago, his company now floundering without his leadership. Vincent's arts district project was proceeding as planned, with groundbreaking scheduled for spring. But beneath this carefully constructed facade, nothing was the same. Audrey slept in the guest bedroom now. They maintained appearances in public, but at home, they were strangers occupying the same cold space. Vincent had allowed this arrangement temporarily, for Lily's sake, and because it served his larger plan. Lily had returned from the arts program, confused and angry when she discovered her uncle had never been involved. Vincent had shown her only selective evidence of her mother's deception, shielding her from the full extent of the betrayal. Still, the damage to her relationship with Audrey was significant. She had withdrawn from both parents, throwing herself into school and college applications, counting the days until she could leave home. What Lily didn't know, what Audrey didn't know, was that Vincent had been systematically dismantling the foundations of their lives, just as they had tried to do to him. Bank accounts were being drained and rerouted. Properties were changing hands. Relationships were being severed. And Vincent was preparing for the final phase of his retribution. That Friday afternoon, Vincent received a call from Felix. It's done, Felix said without preamble. The package is in place. And the other matter? Vincent asked, staring out his office window at the winter sky. Your father has been informed. He'll be at your house at 7, as requested. Vincent ended the call and turned to his computer, typing out an email to Audrey. Need to discuss Lily's tuition arrangements tonight. Coming home early. Please be there by 6:30. Then he opened his drawer and removed a small recording device, placing it in his pocket. Everything was prepared. Tonight, the architecture of his revenge would be revealed. Vincent arrived home at 6:15, noting Audrey's car already in the driveway. He entered to find her in the kitchen, nervously making tea. Vincent, she said, attempting a smile. I've been thinking about Lily's college options, and this isn't about Lily's tuition, Vincent interrupted, placing his briefcase on the counter. It's about what happens next for all of us. Audrey's smile faltered. What do you mean? I've decided it's time to end this charade, Vincent said calmly. I'm filing for divorce on Monday. Instead of shock or protest, Audrey's expression showed unmistakable relief. I think that's for the best. We can try to make it amicable, for Lily's sake. Vincent smiled thinly. Amicable. That's an interesting choice of words for someone who conspired with my best friend to steal my company's biggest project. Vincent, I've told you, it wasn't like that. Alex and I are still in contact, Vincent finished for her. Daily phone calls from the burner phone you keep in your studio. Emails from the account you created under your maiden name. Plans for you to join him in Vancouver next month. Audrey's face went pale. How could you possibly know that? Vincent shrugged. The same way I know about the offshore account where Alex has been transferring funds for your fresh start. The same way I know you've been selling pieces from our art collection through private dealers and pocketing the money. You've been spying on me, Audrey whispered, anger replacing her shock. I've been protecting myself, Vincent corrected. Just as I protected Lily by not telling her the full extent of your betrayal. The doorbell rang, interrupting their confrontation. Vincent checked his watch. Right on time. Who is that? Audrey asked, confusion crossing her features. My father, Vincent replied, moving toward the door. There are some family matters that need resolving. Harold Reeves entered the house like a storm cloud, his 73 years doing little to diminish his imposing presence. Still tall, with the same steel blue eyes as his son, but with a full head of white hair and deep lines etched into his face. This better be important, Vincent, Harold growled by way of greeting. You know I don't like coming here. It is, Vincent assured him, leading his father into the kitchen where Audrey stood nervously. You remember Audrey. Harold nodded curtly. He had never warmed to his daughter-in-law, viewing her artistic sensibilities as frivolous, one of the few opinions he and Vincent had shared over the years. What's this about? Harold demanded. Before Vincent could answer, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, then answered. Yes. The voice on the other end was panicked, hysterical. Vincent. Oh God. Vincent, you need to come home right now. Your garage. What they did to Lily in your garage, I can't even describe it. Vincent's face drained of color, an expression of genuine shock and horror crossing his features for the first time in months. Who is this? What are you talking about? It's Mrs. Petrova from next door, the voice sobbed. I saw them dragging something into your garage. Then the screaming started. Your little girl. Oh God, Vincent, there was so much blood. Vincent's hand tightened on the phone. Lily's at debate practice. She's not home yet. No, she came home early. Mrs. Petrova insisted frantically. I saw her an hour ago. Please, just come home. Your garage. Now, what they did to your daughter. It's unspeakable. The call disconnected. Vincent stood frozen for a moment, then turned to Audrey and Harold, his face ashen. Something's happened to Lily. At the house. In the garage. What? What are you talking about? Audrey asked, confusion giving way to alarm. Lily texted me 20 minutes ago. She's still at school. Vincent was already moving toward the door, car keys in hand. Mrs. Petrova just called. She said Lily's in the garage, that someone hurt her, that there's blood. Vincent, stop. Audrey grabbed his arm. This doesn't make sense. Call Lily right now. Vincent dialed Lily's number with shaking hands. The call went straight to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. I'm going home, he said, his voice hoarse with barely controlled panic. Now. Audrey grabbed her own keys. I'm coming with you. No, Vincent said sharply. Stay here with my father. If this is some kind of trap. Trap? Vincent, what the hell have you gotten mixed up in? Harold demanded, his judicial authority reasserting itself. I don't know, Vincent admitted, and for once, he was telling the absolute truth. This was not part of his plan. This was not choreographed. The fear constricting his chest was real. Just stay here. I'll call when I know what's happening. Vincent slammed his car into drive, tires screeching as he peeled out of the driveway. His mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. Had Alex returned to exact revenge? Had one of his business rivals discovered his plans and decided to strike first, using Lily as leverage? Or was this connected to Felix and his shadowy associates? The 15-minute drive to his house took 8 minutes, traffic laws disregarded in his desperation. As he screeched into his driveway, he was shocked to see Audrey's car already there. She must have left immediately after him, taking the back roads she knew well. Even more disturbing was the sight of his father's luxury sedan parked haphazardly near the garage entrance. Harold had followed as well. Vincent leaped from his car and ran toward the garage, only to find Audrey standing outside it, her face a mask of horror, his father physically restraining her from opening the garage door. "Son, you can't," Harold shouted, his voice cracking with emotion Vincent hadn't heard since his mother's death. It's sickening." Audrey broke free from Harold's grasp and ran to Vincent, her eyes wild with terror. "They made us watch. Please, don't see." Vincent shoved his father so hard the older man fell backward onto the driveway. With a surge of desperate strength, Vincent threw open the garage door and staggered into the dimly lit space. What he saw made him freeze in absolute horror. The center of the garage had been transformed into a grotesque tableau. Hanging from the ceiling was what appeared at first glance to be Lily's body, suspended by hooks through her shoulders, her school uniform soaked in blood, her head lolling unnaturally. But as Vincent's eyes adjusted to the dim light, he realized with a sick jolt that it wasn't Lily at all. It was a mannequin dressed in her clothes, wearing a high-quality mask of her face, the kind used in film production. Around it, projected onto the walls of the garage, were dozens of photographs. Lily with Alex at his lake house, Lily with Audrey and Alex together. Images that told a story of grooming, of poisoning his daughter against him. A laptop sat open on Vincent's workbench, playing audio recordings of conversations between Alex, Audrey, and Lily. Audrey's voice. "Your father doesn't need to know about our special arrangement. He wouldn't understand what Alex is offering you." Alex's voice. "Once the arts district deal goes through, we'll have enough money to set you up anywhere you want to study. Paris, London, anywhere. Your father will be too busy licking his wounds to notice." Lily's voice, hesitant. "But won't Dad be hurt? I don't want to choose sides." Audrey again. "Sometimes people outgrow each other, honey. Your father outgrew my usefulness to him years ago. Now it's my turn to outgrow him." Vincent stood transfixed, barely registering Audrey's screams behind him or his father's shocked muttering. This was not his doing. This was not part of his carefully orchestrated revenge. Then he noticed something else. A manila envelope placed carefully on the hood of his car, his name written on it in unfamiliar handwriting. With trembling hands, he opened it and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "Consider this a gift from an admirer of your work. The real evidence is much worse. Call this number when you're ready for the rest. Remember who your real enemies are." The note was signed simply, "An architect of justice." Vincent turned slowly to face Audrey and his father, who stood in the garage doorway, their faces illuminated by the gruesome light of the projected images. "What have you done?" Audrey whispered, her voice hollow with horror. "Not this," Vincent answered truthfully, looking from the mannequin to the projections to the still-playing audio. "This isn't mine." Harold stepped forward, his judicial instincts taking over despite his shock. "We need to call the police. This is—" "No," Vincent cut him off, sudden understanding dawning. "No police. This isn't a crime scene. It's a message." "A message?" Audrey echoed incredulously. "Vincent, there's a fake corpse of our daughter hanging in our garage. How can you be so calm?" Vincent looked at her with new eyes, seeing not just the betrayal he'd already uncovered, but something deeper and darker. The audio continued playing, revealing conversations he hadn't been aware of, plans more sinister than he'd imagined. His phone buzzed with a text. From Lily. Debate ran long. Getting a ride home with Zoe. Be there in 20. Relief flooded through him, quickly followed by cold determination. Whoever had staged this grotesque diorama had done so to reveal truths he hadn't fully uncovered, and to push him toward a vengeance more complete than he'd planned. "Both of you out," Vincent ordered, his voice deadly calm. "I need to dismantle this before Lily gets home." "Vincent," Audrey began. "Get out," he roared, a lifetime of controlled emotion finally rupturing. "Get out before I show Lily exactly what kind of mother you really are." As Audrey stumbled backward out of the garage, Harold remained, his expression unreadable. "Son, whatever you think you're doing. You don't get to advise me," Vincent said coldly. "Not after what you did to Mom." Not after what you did to me. Something like shame flickered across Harold's face. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Vincent cut him off. Now leave. I have work to do. After they left, Vincent methodically documented everything in the garage with his phone, downloaded the audio files from the laptop, then dismantled the entire display. By the time Lily arrived home 20 minutes later, every trace of the horror had been removed. That night, as Lily slept safely in her room, Vincent sat in his home office, listening to the complete audio recordings and examining the additional evidence that had been gathered, evidence that revealed a conspiracy far beyond what he'd initially uncovered. It wasn't just about the Arts District project. It wasn't just about an affair. Audrey and Alex had been systematically draining Vincent's accounts for years through a complex network of fraudulent charities connected to the museum. They had been manipulating Lily since she was 14, positioning themselves as her saviors against a cold, distant father. And most disturbing of all, they had discussed the possibility of Vincent's accident once the transfers were complete. At midnight, Vincent called the number from the note. "I'm ready for the rest," he said when a voice answered. "I thought you might be," replied a woman he didn't recognize. "Meet me at the Riverwalk, near the Michigan Avenue Bridge. 1 hour. "Who are you?" Vincent asked. "Someone who knows what it's like to lose everything to Alexander Mercer," the woman replied before hanging up. Chapter 5. The Conspirators. The Chicago Riverwalk was deserted at 1 a.m., a bitter January wind whipping off the water. Vincent stood near the Michigan Avenue Bridge, watching a solitary figure approach through the diffuse glow of the streetlights. She was tall and elegant even in practical winter clothing, her blonde hair tucked under a black wool hat. As she drew closer, Vincent recognized her with a start. Charlotte Wells, the renowned structural engineer who had worked with both him and Alex on several projects before abruptly leaving Chicago 2 years ago. "Hello, Vincent," she said, her breath fogging in the cold air. "I apologize for the dramatic display in your garage. I needed to shock you into seeing the full picture." "You did that," Vincent replied, studying her face. "Why? What's your stake in this?" Charlotte's expression hardened. 2 years ago, I discovered irregularities in the West Side Foundation plans, the same project where those workers died. When I confronted Alex, he didn't just fire me. He destroyed me professionally with fabricated evidence of negligence. He took everything: my career, my reputation, my home. She paused. "And my daughter?" "Your daughter?" Vincent asked, confused. "My daughter was dating Alex's nephew. After Alex ruined me, she chose their side. She hasn't spoken to me since." Charlotte's voice was steady despite the pain evident in her eyes. "I've spent the last 2 years gathering evidence against him, tracking his operations, his partners, his victims. 6 months ago, I discovered his connection to your wife and recognized the pattern." "Why didn't you go to the authorities?" Charlotte laughed bitterly. "With what? Financial records that I obtained illegally? Evidence that would implicate powerful people across Chicago? No, this requires a different kind of justice." She handed him a thumb drive. "Everything is here: complete financial records, conversations, plans, including evidence that your father has been helping them." Vincent felt as if he'd been struck. "My father? Harold and Audrey despise each other. They found common ground in their resentment of you," Charlotte said bluntly. "Harold never forgave you for threatening to expose him all those years ago. He's been feeding information to Audrey for years, helping her and Alex navigate around you." Vincent's mind raced, re-evaluating years of interactions, of subtle undermining, of coincidental setbacks. The workers who died at West Side. Was that really an accident? Charlotte's eyes met his. "What do you think?" "I think," Vincent said slowly, "that I've been too measured in my response." "Yes," Charlotte agreed. "You have." She turned to gaze out at the dark water. "They took everything from me, Vincent. Don't let them do the same to you. Don't let them walk away." "What exactly are you proposing?" "A partnership," Charlotte replied. "I have the evidence. You have the resources and the position. Together, we can ensure they never hurt anyone again." "And what does justice look like to you, Charlotte?" She turned back to him, her expression calm, but her eyes burning with a familiar cold fire. "Complete, irrevocable, and without mercy." Vincent considered her for a long moment, then nodded once. "Tell me what you need." Over the next hour, they formulated a plan more intricate and devastating than Vincent's original revenge. It would require patience, precision, and a willingness to destroy not just Alex and Audrey, but anyone who had aided them, including his own father. As they parted, Charlotte handed him a final envelope. "One more thing you should see. I debated whether to include this, but you deserve to know everything." Inside was a photo of Lily, taken 6 months ago at Alex's lake house. She was sitting between Alex and Audrey, looking uncomfortable as Alex's hand rested just above her knee. "She doesn't understand what they're doing," Charlotte said softly. "She's being manipulated, just like my daughter was. Save her, Vincent, before it's too late." Vincent slipped the photo into his pocket, a terrible clarity settling over him. "I will. Thank you, Charlotte." "Don't thank me yet," she replied grimly. "This won't be clean or easy. And when it's done, you may not like what you've become." Vincent thought of the young architect who had once believed in transparency, supported by strength. That man seemed like a stranger now, replaced by someone harder, colder, more like his father than he had ever wanted to admit. "I can live with that," he said finally, "as long as they can't live with what they've done." Chapter 6. The Revelation. Over the next 4 weeks, Vincent became the architect of a new design, a structure built specifically for destruction. By day, he continued his normal routine, overseeing the Arts District project, coming home to the cold silence between him and Audrey, attempting to rebuild his fractured relationship with Lily through careful conversations and small gestures of support. By night, he worked with Charlotte, methodically laying the groundwork for their plan. They converted Charlotte's extensive evidence into actionable intelligence, identifying pressure points, vulnerabilities, and potential allies. They established secure communications, offshore accounts, and contingency plans. They studied their targets, not just Alex and Audrey, but Harold, various museum board members, city officials, and financial partners who had been complicit in the conspiracy. What made their work particularly effective was the combination of Charlotte's meticulous research and Vincent's intimate knowledge of the conspirators. He knew how Audrey thought, how Alex calculated risk, how his father responded to threats. He understood their weaknesses, their blind spots, their secret fears. During this time, Vincent maintained his facade of a man coming to terms with his failing marriage. He told Audrey he would delay filing for divorce until after Lily's graduation in June, presenting it as consideration for their daughter when in reality, it gave him the time and proximity he needed. Audrey, believing she had successfully deceived him about the full extent of her betrayal, agreed readily, continuing her covert communications with Alex and her gradual liquidation of assets. Meanwhile, Vincent focused on rebuilding Lily's trust. He attended her debate tournaments, helped with her college applications, and engaged in long conversations about architecture and design, a shared passion they had once bonded over but had neglected during his years of single-minded career focus. Slowly, cautiously, Lily began to lower her defenses, confiding in him about her confusion regarding her mother's behavior and her discomfort with Alex's increasingly personal interest in her future. "He keeps calling me," she admitted one evening as they sat in his home office reviewing her portfolio for art school applications. "Like, every few days. Asking about my college plans, offering to introduce me to people. Mom says I should be grateful for his interest, but something about it feels off." Vincent kept his expression neutral despite the rage simmering beneath the surface. "What feels off about it?" Lily shrugged, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "He's just really intense. Always talking about how he can take care of my future if I trust his guidance. And the way he looks at me sometimes." She shuddered slightly. "Mom gets mad when I bring it up, says I'm being ungrateful and immature." Vincent nodded thoughtfully. "You should always trust your instincts, Lily. If something feels wrong, it probably is." He hesitated, then added carefully, "You know you can always come to me if you're uncomfortable, right? No matter what anyone else says." "Even Mom?" Lily asked, her voice small. "Even Mom," Vincent confirmed, a cold certainty settling in his chest. The evidence Charlotte had provided, combined with Lily's discomfort, painted a disturbing picture of grooming behavior. Whatever hesitation he might have felt about the extremity of their plan vanished in that moment. The next day, Vincent invited his father to lunch at an upscale restaurant downtown, a rare occurrence that immediately put Harold on guard. The older man arrived precisely on time, immaculately dressed in an expensive suit that Vincent had paid for, his white hair perfectly combed, his bearing still that of a man accustomed to commanding respect. "This is unexpected," Harold remarked after they ordered. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" Vincent studied his father's face. The familiar steel blue eyes, the deep lines of dissipation and bitterness, the thin-lipped mouth that had pronounced so many judgments, both in court and at home. "I've been thinking about family," Vincent said carefully. "About legacy. About the patterns we passed down through generations." Harold's eyebrows rose slightly. "Getting philosophical in your middle age? That doesn't sound like you." "Maybe I'm changing," Vincent replied. "Recent events have given me a new perspective on many things. If you're referring to that grotesque display in your garage, I still think you should have called the police," Harold said, his judicial authority reasserting itself. "It was clearly a threat." "Was it?" Vincent took a sip of water. "Or was it a warning? A revelation of truths I hadn't fully seen?" Harold shifted uncomfortably. "What are you talking about?" Vincent leaned forward slightly. "I know about your arrangement with Audrey and Alex. I know you've been feeding them information, helping them maneuver around me. I know about the offshore accounts, the manipulated contracts, the amended trust documents." Harold's expression didn't change, but Vincent noticed the slight tightening around his eyes, the same tell the older man had displayed during poker games throughout Vincent's childhood. "You're delusional," Harold stated flatly. "Your paranoia has finally overcome your reason." Vincent smiled thinly. "That's what Mom said when she accused you of having affairs. That's what you told the police when she claimed you'd threatened her. Helen is delusional. Helen's paranoia has overcome her reason." He paused. "But she wasn't paranoid, was she?" "She was right." "Ancient history," Harold dismissed with a wave of his hand. "And irrelevant to whatever conspiracy theory you've constructed about your failing marriage." "Not irrelevant at all," Vincent countered. "Because you're using the same playbook now that you used then. Undermine, discredit, isolate. The difference is that I'm not as vulnerable as she was." Harold's eyes narrowed. "What exactly are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. You've been working with Audrey and Alex to systematically dismantle everything I've built, professionally and personally, including poisoning my relationship with Lily." For the first time, a flicker of genuine emotion crossed Harold's face. Not shame or guilt, but anger. "You never deserved that, girl. You're incapable of real connection, Vincent. Always have been. Just like me." A cruel smile twisted his lips. "That's the real legacy I passed down. Not the money, not the connections. The fundamental inability to love properly." Vincent absorbed the blow without flinching. "Perhaps you're right, but I'm trying to break that pattern. Starting with protecting Lily from people who would harm her, including her own family, if necessary." "Protect her?" Harold scoffed. "From what? A better future than being tied to your cold ambition? Alex and Audrey have plans for that girl that would open doors you can't even imagine. Plans that include Alex's special mentorship." Vincent asked quietly. "The kind that involves private meetings at his lake house? The kind that makes her uncomfortable enough to confide in me despite everything you've all done to drive us apart?" Harold's face paled slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do." Vincent removed an envelope from his jacket and slid it across the table. "Take a look." Harold opened the envelope with reluctant fingers, his expression hardening as he examined the contents. Photographs of Alex with various young women over the years, all bearing a disturbing similarity to Lily in appearance, all looking progressively more uncomfortable as the series of photos continued. "Where did you get these?" Harold demanded. "Charlotte Wells says hello," Vincent replied calmly. "She's been quite thorough in her documentation of Alex's mentorship program." Harold closed the envelope with a sharp movement. "What do you want?" "I want you to make a choice," Vincent said simply. "Continue supporting Audrey and Alex, knowing what you now know about his intentions toward Lily, or help me protect her, and yourself." "Protect myself?" Harold echoed with a harsh laugh. "Are you threatening me, son? I'm offering you a chance to be on the right side of history. For once." Vincent stood, placing money on the table for the meal they hadn't eaten. "You have 48 hours to decide. After that, I'll proceed with or without you." As Vincent walked away, Harold called after him. "You're more like me than you care to admit, Vincent. You always have been." Vincent paused, then turned back. "That's where you're wrong, father. I'm becoming something else entirely." 2 days later, Harold arrived at Vincent's office unannounced. He looked older, more haggard than he had at lunch, the weight of his decisions visibly pressing down on him. "I want immunity," he said without preamble, sinking into the chair across from Vincent's desk. "From what specifically?" Vincent asked. "From whatever you're planning for Audrey and Alex," Harold replied. "I want your word that I won't be collateral damage." Vincent studied his father dispassionately. "Why should I give you that?" Harold reached into his suit jacket and removed a small recorder. "Because I have something you need." He pressed play, and Audrey's voice filled the room. "We need to accelerate the timeline. Vincent's getting too close to Lily again, and she's starting to question things. Alex thinks we should move forward with the Stockholm option." Alex's voice, smooth and confident. "It's clean, untraceable. The firm's insurance policies are all up to date, and with Harold's help, we can ensure the investigation concludes properly." Audrey again, and Lily? "Once Vincent is gone, she'll have no choice but to accept our guidance. A traumatized girl needs structure, support. We'll provide that." The recording ended. Harold's eyes met Vincent's. "They're planning to kill you, son, and I've been helping them set it up." A cold wave of understanding washed over Vincent. This Stockholm option referred to a project in Sweden where a structural failure had been initially blamed on the architect, only later revealed as sabotage. Alex was planning something similar, a catastrophic failure that would appear to be Vincent's mistake. "When?" Vincent asked, his voice steady despite the revelation. 2 weeks. The preliminary site inspection for the arts district. They've compromised the soil testing equipment to show false readings. When the foundation fails during your inspection, you'll be directly under it. Harold's voice cracked slightly. "It would have worked, too. I've been guiding the permit process to ensure the right inspectors, ones on Alex's payroll, would sign off on everything." Vincent absorbed this information, reassessing their timeline. "Why the change of heart, father? Do you suddenly care whether I live or die?" Harold looked away. "I never wanted you dead, Vincent. Humbled, perhaps. Taught a lesson about wielding power against family. But not dead." He paused. "And not Lily. When I saw those pictures, when I realized what Alex was really planning for her." He shook his head. "There are lines even I won't cross." Vincent stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline he had helped shape. "You'll have your immunity on 2 conditions. First, you provide every detail of their plan, including names of everyone involved. Second, you agree to disappear afterward, permanently." "Disappear? I'm 73 years old, Vincent. Where would I go? I've prepared a property in Costa Rica. Remote, but comfortable. You'll want for nothing except contact with anyone from your former life." Vincent turned back to face his father. "Those are my terms." Harold considered for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I suppose that's more than I deserve." "Yes," Vincent agreed coldly. "It is." That night, Vincent met with Charlotte in a secure location to inform her of the accelerated timeline. She took the news calmly, already adjusting their plans in her methodical way. "This changes things," she noted, typing rapidly on her laptop. "We'll need to move up all the financial transfers. And the evidence drops." Vincent nodded, studying the intricate flowchart they had created, a perfect diagram of destruction. "Harold will provide the final pieces we need. Names, dates, account numbers." Charlotte looked up from her work, her expression grave. "Are you sure you can trust him? He's betrayed you before." "Trust? No." Vincent shook his head. "But self-interest is reliable. He knows what happens if he crosses me again." "And Lily?" Charlotte asked softly. "What have you told her?" "Nothing yet," Vincent admitted. "But that changes tomorrow. I can't protect her if she doesn't understand the danger." Charlotte nodded approval. "Be gentle, but be honest. She's stronger than you think." The next evening, Vincent took Lily to dinner at their favorite Italian restaurant, a small family-owned place away from the usual social circuits where they might be recognized. Over pasta and sparkling water, he carefully, methodically, began to reveal the truth, starting with Audrey's affair with Alex, proceeding to their financial schemes, and finally, delicately, addressing Alex's concerning behavior toward her. Lily listened with growing horror, her face cycling through disbelief, anger, and finally a profound sadness. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked when he finished. "Because you're in danger," Vincent answered honestly. "Not just emotionally, but potentially physically. And because I need you to trust me completely for the next few weeks." "What's going to happen?" Lily asked, her voice small but steady. Vincent reached across the table and took her hand. Justice. But it won't be easy or clean. And afterward, our lives will be very different. Lily's fingers tightened around his. I want to help. Vincent studied his daughter's face, so like his own in determination, but with a capacity for compassion he had long ago buried. This isn't your battle, Lily. They made it mine, she replied with sudden fierceness. When they lied to me, when they tried to use me against you, she broke off, then continued more firmly. When Alex made me feel uncomfortable in my own skin, they made it mine. In that moment, Vincent saw not a child to be protected, but a powerful ally who had been underestimated by everyone, including himself. All right, he agreed. But we do this my way. Precisely, methodically, safely. Like proper architects, Lily said with a small, sad smile. Exactly, Vincent nodded. We design it from the foundation up. As they left the restaurant, Vincent felt a shift in his understanding of justice. It wasn't just about punishment anymore. It was about reconstruction, building something new from the ruins of betrayal. A future where Lily would be safe, where the patterns of the past would finally be broken. But first, the demolition had to be complete. Chapter 7. The Countermove. The foundation inspection for the Arts District was scheduled for a Wednesday morning in early March. According to Harold's information, the sabotage was already in place. Compromised soil testing equipment that would trigger a catastrophic collapse when activated by remote signal. Vincent, along with the city's chief inspector and 3 members of the development committee, were meant to be standing directly above the weakened section when it happened. An unfortunate accident that would claim multiple lives but would ultimately be blamed on Vincent's firm for negligence, clearing the way for Alex's competing proposal to be reinstated. Audrey, as his grieving widow, would collect the substantial insurance payouts and join Alex in Vancouver once the dust had settled, literally and figuratively. But Vincent had no intention of playing the victim in their carefully choreographed tragedy. 3 days before the scheduled inspection, Vincent called an emergency meeting of his firm's senior partners. In the conference room overlooking the Chicago River, he presented evidence of the sabotage plot without revealing his sources. We have 2 options, Vincent concluded after explaining the situation. Cancel the inspection and alert authorities, which would likely result in years of litigation and the death of the project, or proceed with a counter-strategy of our own. Diego, his assistant of 8 years now elevated to partner status, leaned forward. What kind of counter-strategy? Vincent activated the large screen behind him, displaying detailed blueprints of the foundation site with significant modifications. We've been publicly following the original foundation design, but for the past month, we've actually been implementing these revisions, a completely different support structure that renders their sabotage irrelevant. The partners studied the blueprints with growing appreciation. The revised design was not only sabotage-proof, but actually superior to the original plan, more efficient, more sustainable, and more cost-effective. How did you implement this without alerting the construction managers? Asked Marina Chun, head of the firm's sustainability division. The construction managers are in on it, Vincent explained. After I discovered the plot, I approached them directly. They've been helping us maintain the deception, providing falsified progress reports to the city inspectors while actually building to these specifications. That's legally questionable, noted Tomas Abernathy, the firm's in-house counsel, though his tone suggested admiration rather than censure. Less questionable than attempted murder, Vincent countered dryly. But your concern is noted, which is why I've prepared these. He distributed folders containing legal documents. Whistleblower protections, sworn statements from the construction managers about the threats they received, and evidence of the original sabotage. If anything goes wrong, these go to the authorities immediately. The partners exchanged glances, a mixture of concern and resolve passing between them. They had all benefited from Vincent's vision. Now they were being asked to stand with him in a considerably more dangerous arena. Diego spoke for the group. What do you need from us? Presence and performance, Vincent replied. On Wednesday, I need all of you at the inspection site, following my lead exactly. We need to convince Alex and his collaborators that their plan is proceeding as expected until the moment it isn't. By the time the meeting concluded, the partners were fully committed to Vincent's counterplot. As they filed out, Diego lingered behind. There's more to this than professional sabotage, isn't there? he asked quietly. This is personal. Vincent considered his loyal assistant, weighing how much to reveal. Yes, he finally acknowledged. It's very personal. Diego nodded slowly. I've worked with you long enough to know you're not just protecting the firm. Whatever else is happening, do you need backup? For a moment, Vincent was tempted to share the full extent of the conspiracy, to bring Diego into the inner circle with Charlotte, Harold, and now Lily. But the fewer people who knew the complete plan, the safer they all would be. I appreciate the offer, Vincent said sincerely. But the less you know about certain aspects, the better. Just be ready on Wednesday to play your part. The day before the inspection, Vincent made final preparations. Charlotte had positioned financial investigators to move against the conspirators' accounts the moment the inspection concluded. Lily had been sent to stay with a trusted friend from debate team, safely away from Audrey's influence. Harold had provided the last critical details of the plot, including the names of compromised city officials. That evening, Vincent returned home to find Audrey waiting for him in the kitchen, a glass of wine in her hand, her expression carefully composed into one of casual concern. I heard there's some issue with the foundation inspection tomorrow, she remarked, watching him over the rim of her glass. Something about revised specifications? Vincent maintained a neutral expression despite the confirmation that their communications were being monitored. Just some last-minute adjustments. Nothing serious. You seem tense, Audrey observed, moving toward him with practiced grace. You're working too hard, Vincent. Maybe after this project, we should take a vacation. Reconnect. The suggestion was so audacious, so breathtakingly cynical given what he now knew, that Vincent almost laughed. Instead, he simply nodded. That might be a good idea. I'm worried about you, Audrey continued, placing a hand on his arm in a gesture that once would have seemed loving, but now felt predatory. These big projects always consume you. It's not healthy. I'll be fine once we get past the inspection, Vincent assured her, gently disengaging from her touch. Just one more hurdle to clear. Audrey studied his face, perhaps searching for signs that he suspected anything. Finding none, she smiled and raised her glass. To successful inspections, then? To getting exactly what we deserve, Vincent replied, meeting her eyes directly. That night, as Audrey slept in the guest bedroom, Vincent sat in his home office reviewing the final elements of his plan. On his computer screen was an email from Charlotte confirming that everything was in place. A text from Lily assured him she was safe at her friend's house. A message from Harold provided the last piece of information. The remote signal for the sabotage would be triggered from a device carried by Peter Williamson, the Deputy Commissioner of City Planning and a longtime associate of Alex's. Vincent closed his laptop and stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow would determine not just his professional future, but the shape of justice itself. Morning arrived clear and cold, a perfect early March day in Chicago. Vincent dressed with particular care in his most expensive suit, a subtle armor for the battle ahead. As he adjusted his tie, he noticed Audrey watching him from the doorway of their bedroom. Good luck today, she said, her voice carrying just the right note of supportive spouse. Call me when it's over. I will, Vincent promised, knowing it would be the last conversation they would ever have. The inspection site was already busy when Vincent arrived at 9:30 a.m. His partners were strategically positioned throughout the area, engaging the city officials in seemingly casual conversation. The construction managers moved with practiced efficiency, guiding the inspection team toward the designated areas. Vincent spotted Peter Williamson immediately, a portly man in an ill-fitting suit, nervously checking his phone every few minutes. Following at a discreet distance was one of Charlotte's associates, a former cybersecurity expert who had been monitoring Williamson's communications. At precisely 10:15 a.m., Vincent led the inspection team to the central foundation area, the exact spot where the collapse was meant to occur. He noted with grim satisfaction how Williamson positioned himself at the edge of the group, one hand in his pocket presumably gripping the triggering device. As you can see from these preliminary soil tests, Vincent explained to the group, unfolding a large set of blueprints on a temporary table, we've encountered some unexpected density variations. That's why we implemented these modifications to the foundation design. The chief inspector frowned, scanning the blueprints. These aren't the specifications I reviewed last month. No, they're not, Vincent agreed calmly. We made these adjustments 3 weeks ago in response to new geotechnical data. I have all the documentation here, including signed approvals from your office. The inspector looked confused. I don't recall signing off on any revisions. That's interesting, Vincent remarked, because I have your signature right here. He pointed to a document bearing a perfect replica of the inspector's signature, courtesy of Harold's Connections and Charlotte's Resources. As the inspector leaned closer to examine the signature, Vincent watched Williamson from the corner of his eye. The deputy commissioner was becoming increasingly agitated, repeatedly pressing something in his pocket. Vincent gestured to Diego, who stepped forward with another set of documents. We should also review the structural load calculations for the revised design. You'll notice they exceed code requirements by 20%. As Diego engaged the inspection team, Vincent moved casually toward Williamson. Problem with your phone, Commissioner? He asked quietly. Williamson startled, his face flushing red. What? No, just checking messages. Funny, Vincent mused. I'd have thought you were trying to trigger the remote detonator for the sabotage soil testing equipment. The one that's supposed to cause a catastrophic foundation collapse right about now. He smiled thinly. But of course, that equipment was replaced 2 weeks ago. The blood drained from Williamson's face. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered. No. Vincent reached into the man's pocket with swift precision, extracting a small electronic device. Then what's this? Williamson lunged for the device, but Vincent held it out of reach. Careful, Commissioner. Attacking me would only make your situation worse. You don't understand, Williamson hissed, his eyes darting frantically around the site. If they think I failed. Oh, I understand perfectly, Vincent assured him. Alex Mercer doesn't tolerate failure. Neither do I. He pocketed the device. The difference is, I'm offering you a way out. What kind of way out? Williamson asked, desperation evident in his voice. The kind where you don't go to prison for attempted murder, Vincent replied calmly. All you have to do is follow my instructions exactly. 10 minutes later, Williamson was on his phone, calling Alex with Vincent standing close enough to hear both sides of the conversation. It's not working, Williamson reported, genuine panic in his voice. I've triggered it multiple times. Nothing's happening. What do you mean it's not working? Alex demanded, his smooth voice hardened with anger. The system was tested yesterday. I don't know what to tell you, Williamson responded, following Vincent's whispered prompts. Reeves is still standing here reviewing modified blueprints with the inspection team. Everyone's fine. Modified blueprints? What modified blueprints? Alex's voice sharpened. He's made changes to the foundation design. Major changes. The inspector is reviewing them now. Williamson swallowed hard. And Alex, the changes look good. Really good. Better than the original design. A stream of profanity flowed from the phone, followed by terse instructions. Stall the inspection. Find a reason to delay. We need time to adjust. I'll try, Williamson promised before ending the call. Vincent reclaimed the phone. Well done. Now here's what happens next. By noon, the inspection was successfully concluded. The city officials, unaware of the drama unfolding beneath the surface, had approved Vincent's revised designs and were now enjoying a catered lunch provided by Cornerstone Designs. Williamson, under Vincent's careful supervision, had made 3 more calls to Alex, each more distressing than the last. As the officials departed, Vincent received a text from Charlotte. Financial action initiated. Accounts frozen. Phase 2 commencing. Phase 2 involved the simultaneous delivery of evidence packages to key figures in Chicago's political and business landscape. The mayor, the state's attorney, the FBI field office, and selected journalists known for their integrity. Each package contained carefully curated evidence of specific aspects of the conspiracy, none revealing the full picture, but each damaging enough to ensure immediate action. Vincent's phone buzzed with another message, this one from his home security system. Front door access. A. Reeves, 12:17 p.m. Audrey was home early, undoubtedly alerted by Alex about the failed sabotage. Vincent nodded to Diego. Time for the next step. Diego handed him a sealed envelope. Everything's ready. The press conference is scheduled for 3 p.m. Vincent drove home with deliberate calm, mentally preparing for the confrontation ahead. When he entered the house, he found Audrey in the kitchen, frantically packing items into a small suitcase. Going somewhere? He asked, leaning against the doorframe. Audrey whirled around, Her composure shattered. Vincent, I just got called away for an emergency at the museum. A donor situation in New York. Interesting, Vincent remarked. Because I just spoke with the museum director about the new installation for the arts district. He didn't mention any emergency. It just came up, Audrey insisted, her hands trembling slightly as she continued packing. I was going to call you from the airport. Were you? Vincent moved into the kitchen, placing his briefcase on the island counter. Before or after you met Alex in Vancouver? Audrey froze. What are you talking about? Vincent smiled coldly. We both know exactly what I'm talking about. The failed sabotage at the inspection site. The frozen offshore accounts. The evidence being delivered to authorities as we speak. For a moment, Audrey maintained her facade of confusion. Then her expression hardened into something calculating and cold. A look Vincent had never seen before, but that seemed chillingly natural on her face. How long have you known? She asked, abandoning the pretense. Long enough, Vincent replied. About the affair, the financial schemes, the plans to use Lily. About all of it. Audrey's laugh was bitter. And here I thought you were too obsessed with your precious buildings to notice anything at home. That was a useful assumption on your part, Vincent acknowledged. It allowed me to see who you really are. And who is that, Vincent? Audrey challenged, a strange confidence emerging despite her precarious position. A woman who got tired of being treated like part of your perfect architectural design? A trophy to be displayed, but never truly valued. No, Vincent corrected her. A predator. Someone who saw Lily as an asset to be manipulated. Who conspired with Alex to groom our daughter while planning my death. For the first time, Audrey looked genuinely startled. What are you talking about? Groom Lily? We were trying to help her escape your controlling influence. With private mentoring sessions at the lake house. Vincent's voice hardened. With Alex's hands on her while you looked the other way? With plans to become her support system after my convenient accident? You're twisting everything, Audrey insisted, though her eyes flickered with something that might have been guilt or merely calculation. Alex cares about Lily's future. He was offering her opportunities you never would. I've seen the evidence, Audrey. The recordings. The photographs. The pattern with other young women. Charlotte Wells sends her regards, by the way. At the mention of Charlotte's name, Audrey's face drained of color. Charlotte is involved in this. She's been quite helpful, Vincent confirmed. Especially given her personal experience with Alex's predatory behavior. Audrey's composure cracked further. You don't understand. Alex said she was unstable, that she had fabricated evidence. The same way he'll say you were unstable when he abandons you. Vincent interrupted. The same way you tried to convince Lily I was cold and controlling? That playbook gets rather predictable after a while. For a moment, something like genuine emotion flashed across Audrey's face. Perhaps the realization that she had been as much a pawn in Alex's games as she'd tried to make Vincent and Lily in hers. But it quickly hardened into resolve. What happens now? She asked, her voice steady once more. You turn me in? Ruin me publicly? Try to take Lily away? Lily has already made her choice, Vincent informed her. She's seen the evidence. All of it. That revelation struck Audrey like a physical blow. You had no right to involve her in this. You involved her when you tried to use her against me, Vincent replied coldly. When you exposed her to Alex's mentorship. When you lied to her repeatedly about where she was and who she was with. Audrey's hands clenched into fists at her sides. So what's your endgame, Vincent? Prison for all of us while you play the wronged husband? The devoted father. Prison is certainly part of it, Vincent acknowledged. The financial crimes alone will ensure that. The conspiracy to commit murder should extend the sentences considerably. As for the rest, he opened his briefcase and removed a set of documents. I'm giving you a choice. What kind of choice? Audrey asked suspiciously. Option 1. You cooperate fully with the authorities, testify against Alex and the others, and accept a plea deal that my connections have arranged. You'll serve time, but less than you would otherwise. When you're released, you'll have a modest trust fund, enough to live on, but nothing extravagant. You'll never contact Lily again. And option 2. Audrey prompted when Vincent paused. You resist, fight the charges, maintain your loyalty to Alex. And I release everything, not just to the authorities, but to the media. Every sordid detail, including the evidence of what was being planned for Lily. Vincent's voice took on an edge of steel. Your choice will determine not just how long you spend in prison, but whether you have any possibility of a life afterward. Audrey stared at him with a mixture of hatred and dawning respect. You really did learn something from your father after all. I learned from watching, not from following, Vincent corrected her. Harold has made his choice already. He's cooperating in exchange for a comfortable exile. You should consider your options carefully. And Alex? Audrey asked, a trace of her old calculating self resurfacing. What happens to him in this scenario? Vincent's smile was cold. Alex gets exactly what he deserves. No deals. No options. Complete destruction. Audrey studied Vincent's face, perhaps truly seeing him for the first time, not as the successful architect she had married and planned to betray, but as someone capable of a ruthlessness that matched her own. I need time to think, she said finally. You have until 3 p.m., Vincent replied, checking his watch. That's when the press conference begins. Chapter 8, The Demolition. At precisely 3 p.m., Vincent stood before a hastily assembled crowd of journalists in the atrium of the Cornerstone Designs headquarters. Behind him, his partners formed a solid wall of support. To his left, a large screen displayed architectural renderings of the Arts District project. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, Vincent began, his voice steady and authoritative. I've called this press conference to address serious concerns that have arisen regarding the Chicago Arts District project. The journalists leaned forward, sensing a major story developing. Vincent had been careful in his invitations, selecting reporters known for their integrity and thoroughness. For the past year, Cornerstone Designs has been the lead architectural firm on this billion-dollar revitalization project. Today, during the foundation inspection, we uncovered evidence of potential sabotage, an attempt to compromise the structural integrity of key elements. A murmur ran through the assembled press corps. Cameras flashed as Vincent maintained his composed demeanor. Fortunately, our quality control processes identified the issues before any damage could occur. The inspection was completed successfully, and the project remains on schedule. Vincent paused, his expression turning grave. However, our investigation has revealed that this sabotage attempt was part of a larger conspiracy involving several prominent individuals in Chicago's business and political communities. On cue, Diego distributed folders to the journalists containing carefully selected documents, enough to prove the existence of the conspiracy without revealing Vincent's personal connection to it. These materials outline financial irregularities, conflicts of interest, and evidence of collusion among certain parties who stood to benefit if the Arts District project failed. Vincent gestured to the screen behind him, which now displayed a network diagram of shell companies and offshore accounts. At the center of this conspiracy is Alexander Mercer of Mercer Properties, who has been attempting to position a competing development proposal through various underhanded means. As cameras clicked and reporters flipped through the documents, Vincent continued, I have provided this same information to the appropriate authorities, including the FBI and the state attorney's office. I understand that arrests are already underway. This was not hyperbole. At that very moment, federal agents were executing search warrants at Mercer Properties headquarters and Alex's penthouse. Similar actions were occurring at the homes and offices of key conspirators, including Peter Williamson and several museum board members who had assisted in the financial schemes. I want to emphasize that the Arts District project itself remains sound, Vincent assured the journalists. Cornerstone Designs is committed to completing this vital addition to Chicago's cultural landscape on time and on budget. The attempted sabotage reflects the desperate actions of those who sought to profit at the expense of our city's future. A veteran reporter from the Tribune raised her hand. Mr. Reeves, are you suggesting that Alexander Mercer, one of Chicago's most prominent developers, orchestrated actual sabotage of a construction site that could have resulted in injuries or deaths? The evidence speaks for itself, Vincent replied calmly. And yes, if the sabotage had succeeded, lives would have been at risk, including my own, as I was scheduled to be on site during the expected failure. Another reporter called out, is there any connection between these allegations and the rumors that Mr. Mercer has suddenly left the country? Vincent allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. I couldn't comment on Mr. Mercer's travel plans. However, I believe federal authorities may have questions for him upon his return. For the next 30 minutes, Vincent fielded questions with practiced precision, revealing exactly as much as he intended while maintaining the appearance of full transparency. Behind the scenes, Diego was coordinating with Charlotte, who was monitoring the financial and legal dominoes falling across the city. By the time Vincent concluded the press conference, the story was already breaking nationally. Hashtag Mercer Conspiracy was trending on social media, with new details emerging by the minute as journalists dug into the materials provided. What none of the reporters knew, what most would never know, was the personal dimension behind the professional takedown. Vincent had deliberately kept Audrey's name out of the press conference, focusing solely on the business aspects of the conspiracy. Her fate would be determined separately, away from the public spectacle. As Vincent left the podium, his phone buzzed with a message from Charlotte. A in custody. Chose option 1. H on his way to CR. L wants to meet. Translation: Audrey had surrendered to authorities and agreed to cooperate. Harold was en route to Costa Rica, and Lily wanted to see him. Vincent sent a single reply: home in 30. When Vincent arrived at his house, he found Lily sitting in the kitchen, a cup of tea cooling between her hands. At 16, she looked older than her years today, her expression somber but resolved. "I saw the press conference online," she said as he entered. "It's all over the news." Vincent poured himself a cup of tea and sat across from her. "Are you okay?" Lily considered the question carefully. "Not really, but I will be." She looked up at him with eyes that reflected his own determination. "Mom called me before they took her away." "What did she say?" Vincent asked, keeping his tone neutral. "That she was sorry. That she never meant for things to go this far." Lily's fingers tightened around her mug. "She said she loved me, that she never would have let Alex." She trailed off, unable to complete the thought. "Do you believe her?" Vincent asked gently. Lily was silent for a long moment. "I don't know what to believe anymore. The mom I thought I knew would never have been involved in any of this. But then, the dad I thought I knew wouldn't have orchestrated something like today either." The observation was astute, and Vincent didn't try to deny it. People are capable of surprising depths, both good and bad, when pushed to their limits. "I'm not proud of everything I've done, Lily, but I would do it all again to protect you." "That's what she said too," Lily noted with a sad smile. "That everything she did was to give me a better future. The difference," Vincent pointed out gently, "is that my version of protection didn't involve lying to you or exposing you to predators." Lily nodded, acknowledging the truth of this. "Charlotte showed me everything. The recordings, the photos, the financial records. It was thorough." "Charlotte is nothing if not methodical," Vincent agreed. "She said something that stuck with me," Lily continued thoughtfully. "That revenge is like architecture. It can be an ugly, brutal structure that collapses under its own weight, or it can be something that endures because it's built on a foundation of truth." Vincent studied his daughter with newfound respect. She had absorbed not just the facts of the betrayal, but the philosophy behind his response to it. "What happens now?" Lily asked, echoing Audrey's earlier question, but with none of her mother's calculation. Only a genuine desire to understand the path forward. "Legally, a lot of people will face consequences," Vincent explained. "Alex will likely flee to a country without extradition, but his empire here is finished. Your mother." He hesitated, unsure how much detail was appropriate. "We'll go to prison," Lily finished for him. "She told me. She said it was the only way to ever have a chance at redemption, I guess." Vincent nodded. "She made the wiser choice." "And grandfather?" "He's starting a new life far away from here," Vincent said simply. "It's better for everyone." Lily absorbed this information with remarkable composure. "And us? What happens to us?" "That," Vincent said gently, "is largely up to you. I've made arrangements for you to finish school wherever you feel most comfortable. Here, at a boarding school, even abroad if you prefer. Your college applications are still viable. Your future remains bright." "And you?" Lily pressed. "What happens to you after all this?" Vincent hadn't allowed himself to consider this question deeply. His focus had been so completely on the architecture of justice that he'd given little thought to what would remain after the demolition was complete. "I'm not sure," he admitted. "Professionally, Cornerstone will continue. The arts district will be built. Beyond that," he shrugged, "perhaps it's time for me to build something new as well." Lily reached across the table and took his hand. "Whatever you build next, I want to be part of it. Not just watching from the periphery like before." The simple declaration pierced something in Vincent's carefully constructed emotional armor. For the first time in months, perhaps years, he felt a genuine connection that wasn't based on calculation or strategy. "I'd like that," he said, his voice rough with unexpected emotion. Later that evening, as Lily slept upstairs, Vincent sat in his home office reviewing the day's events. His phone displayed a steady stream of news alerts detailing the expanding investigation. Alex had indeed fled the country, but his empire was crumbling. Federal agents had seized computers and documents from Mercer Properties, uncovering evidence of crimes far beyond what Vincent had revealed. Audrey was in federal custody, her cooperation already yielding valuable information about the wider conspiracy. Harold was on a private jet over the Atlantic, bound for his luxurious exile. The various minor players, corrupt officials, complicit executives, compromised board members, were scrambling to save themselves, turning on each other in predictable fashion. Charlotte had sent a final message: justice served. Moving on to new projects. Call if you need me. Vincent poured himself a small glass of scotch and moved to the wall of windows overlooking the lake. The night was clear, the city lights reflecting on the dark water. He had achieved everything he had set out to do: complete, irrevocable destruction of those who had betrayed him. Yet standing amid the ruins of his former life, Vincent recognized that the real work was just beginning. Demolition was only the first phase of any significant architectural project. What followed, the rebuilding, would define his legacy far more than the precision of his revenge. Chapter 9. The Reconstruction. 1 year later. The Chicago Arts District opened in April, right on schedule. The ribbon-cutting ceremony attracted national attention, with the mayor praising the visionary design that transformed urban blight into cultural renaissance. Vincent stood at the podium, accepting accolades with practiced humility while Lily watched from the front row, her proud smile genuine despite everything that had transpired in the intervening months. The project was widely hailed as Vincent's masterpiece, not just for its architectural brilliance, but for its resilience in the face of the Mercer conspiracy, as it had come to be known in the press. The scandal had expanded far beyond Vincent's initial revelations, uncovering a web of corruption that had infiltrated Chicago's development community for decades. Alexander Mercer remained a fugitive, reportedly moving between countries without extradition treaties, his fortune largely seized or frozen, his reputation destroyed. The FBI had issued international warrants for his arrest on charges ranging from financial fraud to attempted murder, with additional investigations ongoing into his mentorship of young women over the years. Audrey had received a reduced sentence in exchange for her testimony against various conspirators. She would serve 5 years in a minimum security facility, with the possibility of parole after 3. As agreed, Vincent had established a modest trust fund for her post-release life, though he had added one condition not in their original agreement: mandatory therapy. Harold Reeves had settled into his Costa Rican exile, maintaining minimal contact with Vincent through carefully screened emails. His health was failing, his power diminished to the confines of his tropical estate. Vincent had provided for his father's physical comfort while ensuring he could never again influence anyone in Chicago. As for Vincent himself, the public narrative painted him as the wronged husband who had uncovered corruption while maintaining his professional integrity. Few knew the full extent of his methodical dismantling of the conspirators' lives or the cold calculation behind his response to betrayal. Those who did, Charlotte, Diego, Lily, kept his secrets. After the ceremony, Vincent and Lily walked through the completed arts district together, observing visitors experiencing the spaces he had designed. The central plaza with its interactive sculptures, the theater complex with its perfect acoustics, the gallery spaces filled with natural light filtered through precisely angled louvers. "It's beautiful," Lily observed, now 17 and preparing to begin college in the fall. She had chosen architecture at Cornell, a decision that filled Vincent with quiet pride. "Different from your usual aesthetic, though." Vincent nodded, appreciating his daughter's perceptiveness. His previous designs had favored bold, imposing structures, statements of power and permanence. The arts district was more organic, more inviting, designed to foster community rather than simply impress. "I wanted to try something new," he acknowledged. "Something that encourages connection rather than mere observation." They paused before a circular courtyard where children played in the gentle spray of a fountain designed to mimic rainfall. Parents sat on curved benches, conversing easily while monitoring their children. "It's warmer," Lily noted. "More human." "That was the intent," Vincent confirmed. They continued their tour, eventually reaching the district's crown jewel, a combined performance and exhibition space housed in a structure of glass and sustainable materials that seemed to float above the landscape. Inside, a special exhibition had been mounted for the opening: Architectural Justice, Rebuilding After Betrayal. The show featured works by artists exploring themes of destruction and renewal, collapse and reconstruction. At its center was a striking installation by Charlotte Wells, a scale model of a building in the process of simultaneous demolition and reconstruction, with the new structure emerging from the ruins of the old. Vincent paused before the piece, recognizing the metaphor for what it was: a perfect encapsulation of their shared journey from betrayal to justice to renewal. "Have you spoken to her recently?" Lily asked, noting his contemplation of the work. "Charlotte?" "Yes, we consult occasionally." Vincent didn't elaborate on the nature of their continuing collaboration, a foundation they had established to identify and expose corruption in the development industry, using the methods they had perfected in their campaign against Alex and his conspirators. "She's good for you," Lily observed with the directness of youth. "She understands the architect's mindset." Vincent smiled at his daughter's perceptiveness. Charlotte had indeed become an unexpected ally in his personal reconstruction, not a romantic partner, but something equally valuable: a fellow survivor who understood the cost of betrayal and the discipline required to rebuild properly. As they exited the exhibition, Vincent received a text message from his assistant: "Call from Federal Prosecutor Mercer case." "Urgent." "Work?" Lily asked, noting his expression. "Always," Vincent replied with a small smile. "Why don't you go ahead to the restaurant? I'll join you in 15 minutes. After Lily departed, Vincent found a quiet corner of the complex and returned the call. "Mr. Reeves," the prosecutor began without preamble, "we've located Alexander Mercer. Interpol picked him up in Malaysia this morning." Vincent absorbed this news with calm satisfaction. "That's excellent. Will he be extradited?" "That's actually why I'm calling," the prosecutor continued. "He's offering information, significant information about corruption extending far beyond Chicago, in exchange for consideration and sentencing." "I see," Vincent said, his voice betraying nothing of his thoughts. "And you're calling me because part of his offer includes testimony that could potentially implicate you in certain aggressive investigative methods." "Nothing criminal," the prosecutor hastened to add, "but perhaps uncomfortable from a public relations standpoint." Vincent understood immediately. Alex was attempting a final countermove, threatening to reveal Vincent's methodical dismantling of the conspiracy, portraying him as a ruthless architect of destruction rather than a whistleblower who had uncovered corruption. "What are you suggesting?" Vincent asked, though he already knew the answer. "That you consider not opposing his plea deal," the prosecutor replied carefully. "His information could help us clean up corruption across multiple cities. In return, certain aspects of how evidence was gathered in the original case would remain unexplored." Vincent gazed out at the arts district, his creation, his legacy, born from both his architectural vision and his capacity for calculated vengeance. The question before him was simple. Was his perfect revenge worth sacrificing if it meant Alex might eventually walk free? A year ago, his answer would have been an unequivocal no. His father's son would have demanded total destruction, no matter the cost. But the Vincent who had designed this new space, who had rebuilt his relationship with Lily, who had learned that true strength lay in construction rather than demolition, saw the choice differently. "I'll need to review the specifics of his offer," Vincent told the prosecutor. "But in principle, I'm interested in whatever brings the most comprehensive justice." After ending the call, Vincent rejoined Lily at an upscale restaurant overlooking the river. She studied his face as he sat down, reading the subtle shifts in his expression that few others could discern. "Everything okay?" she asked. Vincent considered how much to share, then opted for the truth. "Alex Mercer has been arrested. He's offering information in exchange for leniency." Lily's eyes widened slightly. "Will you fight it?" "I'm considering all options," Vincent replied carefully. "True justice isn't always about maximum punishment. Sometimes it's about maximum revelation or maximum healing. Lily nodded slowly, understanding the shift in his thinking. And Mom, will you fight her parole when she's eligible? Vincent had given this considerable thought over recent months. No, he said finally. I won't oppose it. What happens between her and you after that is your choice. I won't dictate your relationship. But you'll never forgive her, Lily noted. It wasn't a question. Forgiveness isn't in my architectural vocabulary, Vincent acknowledged with a small smile. I can rebuild, redesign, repurpose, but some materials remain permanently compromised once they've failed structurally. And Alex, my grandfather, will you ever let them back into your life? Lily pressed. No, Vincent said simply. Some betrayals cannot be overcome. Some foundations cannot be repaired once they've crumbled. That's not vengefulness, it's architectural reality. Lily accepted this with a thoughtful nod. What about your foundation? Has it been repaired? The question was profound in its simplicity. Vincent considered it carefully before answering. I'm building on new ground, he said finally. With better materials, more thoughtful design, proper support structures. He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. And with a brilliant apprentice architect to point out flaws in my thinking. Lily's smile was bright enough to illuminate the darkest corners of Vincent's rebuilt life. I like that blueprint. As they continued their meal, discussing Lily's upcoming college plans and Vincent's new projects, he reflected on the nature of true architectural vengeance. It wasn't about destroying your enemies, though he had certainly done that. It was about creating something so magnificent from the ruins that the destruction became merely the necessary first phase of a greater construction. The arts district would stand for generations, a testament to resilience and vision. Lily would carry forward the best elements of his architectural thinking while improving upon his human foundations. And Vincent himself had emerged not diminished by betrayal but refined by it. His edges sharper, his vision clearer, his structures more deliberate. He had built a new life from the wreckage of the old. And unlike those who had betrayed him, he would never again mistake glass for strength or transparency for truth. The architect of his domain had become the architect of justice. And finally, the architect of his own transformation.